This episode of the Card Insiders podcast is brought to you by Omnisend. Omnisend enables nimble e-commerce teams to increase sales, not the workload, with highly relevant email and SMS marketing automation. One-click e-commerce stack integrations, pre-built workflows, and intuitive drag-and-drop editing makes it easy to get up and running without diving into the gritty details, unless you want to. More than 50,000 e-commerce brands use Omnisend to grow their business on autopilot. Shouldn't you? To learn more about how Omnisend can help you grow your business, visit omnisend.com. Welcome, everyone, to Season 2 of the Card Insiders podcast. I'm your host, Greg Zakwitz. This season, I'll be speaking with e-com professionals to help you get your online business ready for the holiday season. Today's topic, we're discussing how to prepare your Amazon store for the holidays. Before I get into today's episode, I'd like to kindly ask you to tell your friends and colleagues about us and give us a positive rating and review on Apple Podcasts, if you will. Also, if you have any questions, comments, or are interested in telling your email marketing or e-commerce story, we'd love to hear from you, and you can email us at podcast@omnisend.com. Now let's jump into today's episode where I welcome to the show the co-founder of Ecom Crew and host of the Ecom Crew podcast, Mike Jackness. Welcome to the show, Mike. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Blessed to be here. Appreciate it.
So how often are you on the flip side of the microphone these days?
I usually get a couple in a month. Ourselves, we're recording one podcast a week. We're actually about to go back to 2 per week, but yeah, I'm usually being interviewed by a couple people a month.
There you go. So we were just talking offline. This is old hat, right? So we're just plowing through here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love doing this stuff. It's good practice. It's always good to be behind the mic.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mike, just very quickly, for those that may not know, why don't you just tell us a little bit about Ecom Crew and a little bit about the podcast as well, if you will?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Ecom Crew's been around now for a few years. We're at episode 330-ish as of recording this. Started doing it just because when I started getting involved in e-commerce, I was realizing that some of the stuff we were doing was like mystifying to a lot of people, even though I felt like it was just like everyday business. It wasn't really that big of a deal to me. And what I've realized is that we've approached e-commerce from like the marketing and SEO and the IT side of the business. And a lot of people get into e-commerce because of the product side of the business. You know, they own a family business or they had this really cool idea for a product and wanted to get into e-commerce and don't necessarily know all the technical aspects. And I'm very jealous of people who can develop amazing products and things of that nature. And they're jealous of me for the IT stuff. So it's a good match, I think. And we just talk about what we've been doing with our own stores, which is also unique. We're very transparent and it's been a blast.
Very good. Appreciate the background. Good. Good podcast listen for those that don't as well. I think your most recent one was, which I have downloaded but haven't listened to it yet, but it's on content marketing, which is in obviously my wheelhouse nowadays. So definitely going to jump in there and check it out. But if you haven't, Ecom Crew.
I think things have come full circle. You know, content now is such a huge part of e-commerce, and I don't think a lot of people realize that yet. But I think people are going to realize it soon enough because traffic is eyeballs and eyeballs is money, right? And if you can get a good content marketing machine together, it can really help your e-commerce business.
Absolutely. And there's definitely an increased talk, with consultants and things like that. Talk about the SEO aspects of e-commerce sites now, which you might have not thought about 5 years ago, about how to rank for certain keywords and how product descriptions and all that stuff plays into it. But it's pretty fascinating, that whole world nowadays.
Definitely.
So, Mike, we're here to talk about selling on Amazon and what we're going to do for the holiday season. And I guess from a baseline, we're in a weird time where e-commerce has, by no fault of its own or anyone else's, really accelerated more so in the last several months for obvious reasons than kind of projected. We normally see that uptick during each year over year during the holiday season anyways. An uptick was expected to continue this year, might certainly be propelled even further this year. Where you sit, and from your opinion, when you look at in terms of prep this year, does the preparation that retailers need to take this year from your standpoint when they're selling on Amazon, does it differ based on the expected traffic and eyeballs on e-commerce this year? Or do those fundamental principles, are they really the same this year? What do you expect to happen from that standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're fundamentally the same, but I think a lot of people are going to get caught off guard just by the madness. There's definitely a lot of indications that are pointing to this being by far and away the biggest e-commerce season ever. Every year it continues to go up, as you mentioned. But if like March and April are any indication of what's to come, I mean, they were doing Black Friday numbers like every day for months, and so, and that was in March and April. And so I think you have a shift of a whole new class of people who were never really that comfortable buying online. Think your grandparents' age have now been like exposed to like, oh, this isn't so bad after all. So a whole new class of people who were kind of retail shoppers are now being driven online. It's really hard to obviously predict the future. But again, if March and April are any indication, and you look at other flus or pandemics and things of this nature as a barometer, this could be a pretty brutal winter in terms of maybe more shutdowns or people just being afraid to go out in the retail stores. So I think that this bodes really well for e-commerce, to the point where I am deeply concerned that Amazon's infrastructure, is amazing and robust as it is, will become overloaded again. And so I think these are the things we have to worry about.
So from a seller standpoint, that's got to be one, worrisome if indeed Amazon bogs down like it's done on past Prime days or things like that as well. But also from a planning standpoint. So do you think the biggest area of impact is going to be, is it going to be like eyeballs and the amount of money you might need to spend for ads? Do you think it's going to be supply chain or inventory purposes? Like if you had to put your money somewhere and be like, for a normal e-com brand that is, or a normal seller who was on Amazon selling, what area would you say that, hey, you should probably look at this really hard going into this year when you're thinking about preparing for it?
Put our money where our mouth is when it comes to what I'm about to tell you. So it'll be fun to revisit this in January or February and see what a moron I was or how brilliant I was. We can and see how
hopefully the latter, right?
Hopefully, we'll see. But what we've decided to spend all our money on is just loading up on inventory. And so if you think about what we saw in the first quarter of this year and early second quarter, first of all, the supply chain at the source was disrupted. You're coming from China. And if you realize that too late, then it's just way too darn late, because it takes 6 to 8 weeks to get inventory physically over here, even if it's already manufactured and ready to go. We're already seeing port congestion and a bunch of other issues. And so early on, we decide we're going to put aside what has been the fundamental part of our business model, which is to be as efficient as possible with our supply chain. Carrying as few days of inventory in stock, almost trying to get to a just-in-time inventory type model where we have the least amount of cash locked up in current SKUs so we can have money to develop new SKUs, and also just not have more risk on the table by having more inventory. But we put that aside for right now, realizing that what I've predicted is the person with the most inventory is going to win. It's people that can keep their stuff in stock is going to be who's going to win. From that point of view, we have purchased more inventory from China, landed more of it here in the US, gotten it at least stateside. So it, that saves us a couple months of supply chain timing.
Okay.
Got it into a 3PL and gotten it so we can get the stuff into Amazon as quickly as possible. And what we've also done is maxed out what Amazon's allowing us to send in. And that number now is, significantly less than it used to be. We used to have basically carte blanche to send in whatever the heck we wanted, because we had a good inventory performance index score, and we basically had unlimited amounts of inventory we can send in. But now Amazon has limited every single SKU, no matter who you are, what the amount you can send in. But we've basically maxed that out. We're trying to anticipate it being very difficult to get more inventory into Amazon, but whatever is already in Amazon, they will sell and get it out the door as quickly as possible and give that priority. And so again, we'll see if we're right, but that's the route that we're taking. That's where we put all of our money for this holiday season.
Very good. And if we're a seller on there and say they followed the same path you did, they've got their inventory in, or even if their inventory is manufactured here in the US or, say Canada, and they got that in and they have that, what's the next step for this year? Is it pretty much business as usual for it? So we're going to optimize, maybe product listings, ads, things like that. Or is there something else kind of peeking out from behind the curtain and say, hey, you should probably take a look at me this year versus any other year? Is it business as usual? Or is there something else outside of inventory that you think is going to have a bigger play this year than others?
Well, the business as usual stuff, I think, we're doing all the time, right? The listing optimization and things of that nature. I mean, if you haven't already done that stuff, I think that that's something you should be doing in your Amazon business literally nonstop. We're never happy. It's kind of like having a website, right? When you develop your new website, you're like, oh, this is beautiful. And you feel that way for about 3 days. And it's like time to immediately start thinking about how you can make your website better again. That's how we feel about our Amazon listings. So we're constantly, tweaking and improving our images and our copy to optimize for the best conversion rate possible with our secondary images. And with our main image, we're looking to get the best click-through rate and get people to our images as possible. So that's going to remain. We're going to continue to do that, through the holidays anyway. The thing that will be different for us this year specifically is we have also decided that we are not going to do any Black Friday or Cyber Monday or Prime Day promotions, which I know sounds absolutely crazy, but what I found is, in years past, even in a good year, these types of promotions are very profits or sanity type issues. So revenue's vanity and profits sanity. So it feels good. Like I sold $100,000 a day, and it's like, oh man, you go like high-five your buddies, but like you go look at what you made on that, and you made $1,000 when normally you're making $10,000 on it because you're giving up all the margin just to get the sales.
Sure.
And I think that there is an argument you can make that it's still worthwhile because you're getting all these extra products out into people's hands. And especially if you have the kind of brand that people will then reorder and word of mouth happens like we did with Color It. I think as a larger picture, it makes sense. But these types of promotions are very difficult to plan in terms of like inventory needs. And if you're selling inventory that will otherwise sell at full price, just to kind of get more out the door earlier in the season, I think it's going to be a disadvantage this year. So we've just made another bold prediction that it's not worth it for us to do any of these types of promotions this year. We're just going to keep the inventory that we do have and do the best that we can, selling as many full price sales as we can. And again, hoping that there's going to be inventory disruption in our space. So as competitors run out of inventory, we're going to be there to capture those sales. And I think that that's going to be where hopefully the real brilliance of our plan comes into fruition there.
Very interesting. And I've got some follow-ups there. I'm going to ask you the first one, which I'm going to presume the answer is exactly what you said. But you mentioned, hey, we'll be selling full price, especially if the competitors are obviously out of inventory because of supply chain or whatever the reason.
Mm-hmm.
But are you looking at discounting, like not running these sales, but just having a generally lower price than you maybe normally would? So if it's, I'll just pick a price point, $29.99, maybe you drop it to $27.99 just to make it have the appearance that it's cheaper, but you're not really selling. You don't doing these massive sales, or are you just going full price with everything?
We're going to just go full price with everything. And in fact, there's a argument to even raise the price, go the other direction. And we've realized this from the last 2 years of selling on Amazon at the holidays. And this is again in non-pandemic times. We sold our business Color It last year, but we had it for 3 holiday seasons. And that was a very holiday focused business. You're selling gel pens and colored pencils and markers and coloring books, things that are very giftable. And you make a prediction going into the holidays of like, okay, I think we're going to sell double what we normally sell during the holidays. So let's get that kind of inventory in. And you realize, oh crap, that's not going to be enough. And at some point you're like, well, let's just raise the price. We're going to run out of it anyway. Let's raise the price and see what happens. And so you get to run these tests in a time where you have nothing to lose. And we realized that by raising our price 10% during that moment, we had a couple weeks of inventory. It didn't slow our sales down at all. Like it made no difference. And now we're pocketing an extra 10%, which is all going right to the bottom line. Fast forward to the following year, like, okay, well, I'm not going to run out of inventory this year. I'm going to order 4x more than like we normally sell in October, let's say, and be prepared for the holidays this time. And the next year we had the same problem. The holiday volume is so darn high for these types of products on Amazon that even with that extra inventory, we still didn't have enough. And we did the same thing again, where we raised our price we're going to run out of it anyway. We might as well make as much as we can, maybe stretch out our inventory a little bit longer. And lo and behold, the same thing happened. It didn't slow things down at all. All we did was make more money. And so we're going to be looking at that same thing this year very carefully of strategically, can we be raising our price? And the easiest way to test that is just to go ahead and do it. Like as you see your volume ramping up during these high volume times, raise your price by 3% at a time. And if you don't see any slowdown day to day, then you can raise it another 3% or another 3% till you see it kind of, throttling things back, and you can make a decision on what to do there. But the reality is that most shoppers at the holidays, they're not price conscious. They're really looking for gifts, and they're looking to scratch something off their list. It's a matter of convenience. It's interesting when people are buying something for themselves, they're more price conscious than when they're buying something for someone else. They know someone wants a set of gel pens. They're going to just get on Amazon, search for that, look for the best reviews, make a quick decision, and just order the darn thing, scratch it off their list so they can move on to the next thing. At least that's been our experience.
I think there's a little bit of psychological factor that plays into that as well. So if I'm buying a gift for you, Mike, right, and I see a set of gel pens that are $15 versus another one that are 11, I might want to spend the extra $4 because I'm assuming I'm getting better quality out of it, whether it's true or not. But if I'm buying it for myself, I'm like, yeah, can I save the $4 here? So I think there's a psychological factor along with exactly what you said.
Absolutely. Think about your own life. People kind of have a budget for each person. This is a $25 friend. This is a $50 friend, whatever, right? And you're going to kind of go try to target that price point. And so it kind of, feeds into exactly what you're saying. And yeah, I mean, it's worked out well for us.
You mentioned, I want to follow up because you mentioned Prime Day with this, which obviously we are pushing Prime Day later into the year this year than in years past.
Yep.
For obvious reasons as well. Holiday shopping just in general has started seemingly earlier and earlier each year. Last year, it seemed to kick off maybe that last week of October, somewhere like pushing into November. My anticipation is maybe Prime Day this year will be the official start of holiday season this year. Do you see it the same way?
Yeah, I think so. It's hard to say what date they're gonna pick. I've heard a whole bunch of different theories out there, but I do think it's gonna. I mean, it's already getting into September as we're recording this, and so even if they did it right away, it's already kind of starting to become beginning of the holiday season because that happens earlier every year. So I think you're dead on with that. Yeah.
Do you think that is advantageous to sellers? I mean, you already talked about it. Hey, we're not going to discount, but do you think that's advantageous to sellers that want to test out certain price points or certain things this year where if they say, okay, I might want to do my big promotions for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. I normally do them from Prime Day, but do you think they have that opportunity to say, okay, I'm not going to do it for Prime Day. Let's see what moves. And then if it moves, we don't necessarily have to do it for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Do you think you'll see more sellers kind of taking that approach this year? Or do you think it's really going to be hit or miss?
Yeah, I think it's probably hit or miss. And I think that there's so many factors that go into these types of things. I mean, if let's just say you're cash flow poor right now and you have a bunch of inventory in the warehouse and you got to get things moving. Obviously, like every business has different data points that they're working with. And, I think in those situations, there's definitely lots of situations like that where it makes sense to just go ahead and test out the waters and maybe just get some cash to the door. But for us, again, I'm really betting on there's only so much physical inventory that we can have. And profit is my number one factor here that I'm going to be thinking about this year and not looking at revenue. Because like a lot of times, we all get caught up in the revenue numbers, especially around the holidays. And we want to high five our buddies of like how much we sold during the holidays. But we're going to be taking a very much a profit first approach this year and skipping all those promotions.
Very good. And let's talk about, while we're on the subject, let's talk about Cyber Weekend, right? So that Black Friday, Cyber Monday, that general time frame there. Let's say a seller is looking at doing traditional business as usual. So they're going to be doing discounting and just kind of sticking with what they've always done and what you see a lot of retailers or sellers doing. If there's a tip you would give to them, so are there special things that maybe for that weekend to be aware of that maybe in years past they're not going to be, or just a tried and true best practice for something that weekend on Amazon that you think they might be able to take advantage of?
Yeah, I mean, I think on Amazon it's tough because you get lost within all the noise. I mean, if you have an off Amazon platform as well, like we certainly did with Color It, the game's a lot different. Our approach was during Cyber Monday and Black Friday, we're going to just offer the token sale, right? I mean, like I feel like you kind of have to just go through your paces and go through the motions of like we're going to offer 10% off or 20% off or whatever, and that's what we had done in years past. Over time, we got smarter about this. So like, how can we offer like a higher perceived value to our customers that doesn't necessarily cost us anything extra and or serves a better purpose? Last year, to accomplish this goal, and this is something we could only do off Amazon, but with our brand Color It, we were in a situation where we just had an excessive amount of our markers, which also have a shelf life. It's one of the few products we have that because they can dry up because they're alcohol based. And so what we did was spend $50 or more and get a set of 24 markers for free, spend $100 or more and get a set of 50 markers for free. And so as a percent discount, that was huge because we sold those markers for $30 and $50 a set respectively. It was basically a 50% discount or a 50% bump in value if you spent $100. And so what it did was it got people spending money on all of our other inventory, let them buy whatever they want. And then we spiffed them with this product that had a high retail value, but a low value to us in terms of keeping it around. And we or you can flip it the other way, at a high value for us to get rid of it. So if you can think of things like that, it works real well. And the other thing that worked well for us is we've always run these 10 days of Christmas promotions starting on December 1st and advertise that to our list. This is where like having a community, a Facebook group and email list and maybe a Facebook Messenger list comes in really handy because you can communicate with them outside of Amazon. And we also run the same sale on Amazon and our website on those days. So the way that worked was the 10 days of Christmas was December 1st through 10th. And every day was a different item that we were discounting. And again, we picked 10 items that we had just too much stock of, and so you can use these sales to move your slower moving inventory. And you can do it at a time where, Cyber Monday and Black Friday is like the real noisy period of the holiday season. So we kind of like extracted our promotion outside that time frame and put it in that first week of December where people are still very hot to buy gifts. It's, far enough away from Christmas where you can still guarantee delivery and all these different types of things, but be outside the noise of Black Friday, Cyber Monday.
Very good. I love the example. I think this is a common approach that a lot of retailers will take as well, just outside of Amazon as well for that time of year. So you'll see a lot of those, the extra deep sales or the 12 days of Christmas, whatever it might be. And it's all that warehouse inventory sitting back there, right? A lot of times.
Exactly.
Which is good. So
yep.
I'm going to take a step back, just kind of product listings here as well. And let's just kind of get some fundamentals for people, if you will, Mike. With product listings, right, we're talking about titles, images. You mentioned something specific with images. We're trying to get the click-through on the second image, things like that. If you could spend just a couple minutes talking about some of these best practices for product listings, whether they're tried and true year-round or they're special tactics just for the holiday season, whatever holiday that might be. Can you walk us through kind of some of those key things that sellers should be looking at this year?
One of my really good friends in this business is Greg Mercer. He started Jungle Scout and also owns a company and software called Splitly. And Splitly allows you to split test your images, your title, your bullet points, et cetera, et cetera. And the great thing about running a company like that is you get like stupid amounts of data. And I love data. One night as we were having some beers together, just kind of chatting about this, nerdy stuff, he mentioned to me that basically 90% of the value in Splitly and split testing all this stuff is the main image and the title. Like everything else is pretty insignificant. Like it matters, but it barely matters. And so if you're a small company and only had time to really test a few things, you should be working on your titles and your main image, making them convert better in terms of click-through rate. People can't buy your product if they don't end up on your listing. And you want to be looking at, you type in something like gel pens or gel pens for coloring books or whatever it might be, whatever the search is, whatever you're selling, look at what the results are. Look at the page that comes up. A lot of times, like everything looks exactly the same. It's becoming like a sea of everything looks the same on Amazon. Like, I mean, we sell tactical gloves. It's a great example of this. You type in tactical gloves and like every freaking image is black gloves, like on a white background with a guy with a fist with a palm open. What can you do to make your thing pop? Can you arrange your product a little bit differently? Can you figure out a way to add some color into that? Whatever it might be, because people are visually looking down and they're not looking at everything in detail. They're not going to read every single word in the page. They're just looking for something that draws their attention. This is, I think, something that people often miss. And so you can definitely do that with your listings. And now while it is against Amazon's terms of service to say like holiday sale on that image or Christmas sale, whatever the heck you might put on there, you can subconsciously kind of update your images to have some like green and red, for instance, on them and things like that, or maybe some Christmas like colors or holiday colors. And so those are some like subtle things that we'll do throughout the holidays to hopefully increase the click-through rate and just get people to our list. And that's priority number one. And then from there, obviously having secondary images that are really good and enhanced brand content that's really good. And short and concise bullet points and things like that, adding video content to your listings, all these things add up to being the differentiator. The thing is that people don't put the hard work in to finish their listings. I love to tell a story about like the Kentucky Derby. The horse that finishes in first gets $1 million. The horse that finishes in second might get $500,000. He didn't run half as fast. He ran a head slower, or maybe one horse length slower. So it's that extra like 0.1% of effort that you're going to do over your competitors that's going to make you twice as much money. And this is what you want to focus your time and energy on, in my opinion.
That's a great example. And I immediately thought of Happy Gilmore, where it's like, oh, what's the guy who comes in last? What?
Right.
He's like, all right, so I'm guaranteed money.
Right. Yeah.
That's great. It's a really nice example, though. Super basic question for you, because you mentioned like holiday colors and images and things that you can and can't do for Amazon. Are you allowed to include pictures of like Santa in pictures, or is that against the terms of service?
That's an interesting one. That's probably a gray area. I don't know that they specifically say you can't do that, but it's probably a little bit gray. And honestly, the reality is that there's degrees of things you can get in trouble for on Amazon. And this is like on the lower end of the scale. Like it's against terms of service, yes, but usually the worst penalty is they remove your image. That's the worst penalty that I've seen, versus doing something black hat like traffic manipulation or review manipulation. That's something they'll just shut your account down for completely, no questions asked, and good luck trying to get it reopened. And so the image stuff, you can usually kind of push the envelope a little bit more, especially around the holiday time where you might only have these images up for 6 weeks, and the chances of them being able to react to like that quickly are probably pretty small. So, kind of use your own risk tolerance to decide what you want to do there.
Fair enough. Since we're talking about product listings and things like that, let's briefly touch on ads if we can. So we expect more eyeballs on Amazon this year. We expect a lot more competition, things like that. Are ads pretty much a requirement for success during the time of year? Is this year maybe one of those years that's a little bit different to say, okay, if you normally spend X amount, maybe you should pick that up a little bit this year? Or is it just going to be too costly for maybe some, not high volume sellers to just be like, all right, let's see what I can get organically? Where do you sit from the paid listing standpoint this year?
Years past data also kind of all coming to accumulation here. You get knowledge over the years. What we found over the holidays is that ads actually perform better. And it makes sense, again, from a psychology standpoint. There's a lot of window shopping or hemming and hawing about, am I going to buy this or not, the other 9 months of the year or the other 10 months of the year. But when you're a motivated Christmas shopper, like you're looking again to cross this thing off your list. And so even though cost per clicks are significantly higher around this time of year, we find that our ads perform better. And so we definitely amp up our ad budget. And we're always kind of trying to target 2/3 organic, 1/3 PPC on our listing is like kind of like the benchmark of where things start to get a little bit too out of whack when it gets over 1/3 PPC. Obviously, we like listing that works really well organically, where we're only spending 20% or 10% of our sales come from PPC. But during the holidays, to kind of answer your question, again, I mean, we're ramping up budgets, we're ramping up cost per clicks. We use software that does automatic bid adjustments for us, and we find that we can keep our target A cost well within check, even though we're spending per click maybe 2 to 3 times. The real pro tip here that we've learned the hard way is that you have to be very reactive and go in manually and make some drastic measures to cut those bids down like December 24th. Because if you wait for this automatic bidding software to slowly bring the bids back down, we wasted, I'm kind of embarrassed to admit it, and it also is just a gulp in my throat still, but we spent tens of thousands of dollars last January unnecessarily because we didn't react quick enough. It's like, oh, that software's taking care of that for us, and you just kind of put that in the back of your mind, don't think about it. And when you look at your P&L at the end of January, it's like, what the hell happened here? And we realized what happened was that it doesn't react quick enough. It's slowly bringing the bids down. What you need is someone manually go in there and cut them back down to like 1/3, bring them back to what they were in October. And so we have that on our plans for this year to make sure that we do that.
Very good to know. You mentioned that software that you guys use. Is that a proprietary one, or is that a vendor you use? And if it's a vendor, are you comfortable sharing who that is?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I just sometimes people on podcasts don't like that, so I didn't want to mention it. But we use Celix. It's a great software. We've known these guys for a while. We actually had them on our podcast. It's one of the softwares that I log in and use every day. Not only does it do automatic PPC bidding, which I think is worth its weighting, by the price of it by itself, but it also tracks keywords and shows you daily sales and things like this. And lots of other software out there does that too. But for us, it's just been a good all-in-one solution.
Very good. And Mike, I'm going to just a couple questions before I get you out of here. So you mentioned something before. One of the most commonly overlooked things that you see sellers do is, not focus on the images for this time of year. I was going to ask you what the most commonly overlooked item is. Would you say that is indeed the most commonly overlooked item, or is there something else that jumps off the top of your page or top of your head to you?
I do think it's the most commonly overlooked thing. It blows me away because you would think that there's all these other places you can cut corners, but people will spend months or even years developing the product and going back and forth with sample after sample after sample and tweaking things until it's just right, and then they invest tens of thousands of dollars in inventory, and then they cut corners on their images. It blows me away, because it's only a few $100 extra to get it right. And the thing is, again, think about your own shopping habits and why this is so important. When you go into a retail store, you can look at the item and touch it and feel it, take it out of the box, maybe try it on or play with it depending on what type of item it is, and ask a salesperson questions, all these different types of things. Online, all of that is removed. Your only window to your customer is your imagery. And if you look at the different scales of if you put things into groups of amateurish, semi-amateur, professional, and you look at the different images that are on Amazon, you have an opportunity to look like a Fortune 500 company, way above your weight by only spending a few $100 extra more and maybe a few hours to really hit home with your imagery. Make infographic and call out what makes your product good and better than everybody else, and do it in a way that isn't wordy. People can understand by just looking at it, because people just don't read. And so if you can convey all this with your imagery, and you only get, those 6 or 7 images plus maybe a video, the real estate's small. You have to put a lot of effort into doing it. So yeah, for me, I think that this is where people really screw up, and they just don't put enough effort into it.
Excellent answer. Excellent reasoning. And then finally, if I had to ask you for the number one, do not do this when it comes to marketing during the holidays on Amazon, what would you point to?
I think that this, again, is not just a holiday thing, but don't do the black hat stuff. It's tough because everyone else, quote unquote, everyone else out there is doing it, right? And you see the results that they get, and they're dramatic. They will start selling 2 to 3 to 4 times more stuff because they're doing black hat tactics. But remember, this is binary. It works until it doesn't. And the day that it doesn't, your account's shut down. You're compromising all of the inventory that you've bought, all of your employees, and your livelihood. And usually with the first time you get your account shut down, you can get it back open after, hiring someone for $10,000 or $5,000 to help you, being out of business for weeks, which, during the holidays is 6 weeks. You could be out the whole holiday season. Just don't do it. Think about the long-term strategies, do the white hat thing where you don't have to lose sleep at night. Hope that Amazon eventually is going to address a lot of this black hat stuff and put an end to it. Let those guys do what they're doing, and you focus on what you're doing.
Very good. Great advice. Great insights, Mike. We certainly do appreciate it. Just very quickly, I'm always curious about where people digest business information from, whether that's books or podcasts or newsletters or websites. So if I turn that to you and say, where do you generally digest most of your business content? What would you say that is?
I want to make a funny Sarah Palin reference and just say I read all of it. Now,
that's so not helpful, Mike.
I know, I'm just being funny. I was watching that old Saturday Night Live clip. Someone shared it with me the other day, and it was just so darn funny. That's why it was on top of my mind. And I figured it was old enough that it's no longer controversial. For me, I'm a huge fan of E-commerce Fuel. Andrew Darian, I think, puts out really great stuff. I'm a member of that community as well. Just really on point stuff over there. Steve Chu puts out great stuff over at My Wife Quit Her Job. So I'm reading a lot of that stuff. I'm fortunate to be in a great mastermind as well. And this is just stuff that comes across my desk that is just piecemeal, but they're always sharing little clips of things here and there. And so I think that making sure that you're in some sort of community, whether it's something like E-commerce Fuel, where it's more public and you can just join it and you get lots of clips over there. So you can let someone else do all the hard work and let them read all the crap and share the nuggets. In terms of books, the number one book I love to recommend and talk about that really transformed our life and our business is Traction. If you haven't read that yet, no matter how big or small you are, I highly recommend it. A lot of entrepreneurs are thinkers and dreamers and not implementers. And I'm definitely in that bucket. And so once I read that book, I realized that was the problem, for over a decade of that was constant. I just could never put my finger on it. And so once I hired an implementer, basically, or now who was our COO, someone that takes all my ideas and puts them into action and makes sure that the T's are constantly being crossed and the I's are being dotted, and someone who pushes back and says, hey, wait, like we had a plan. These ideas that you have are great, but you can't do that idea and the ideas we've already talked about. We have to either sub something out, or maybe your idea can just wait. As an entrepreneur, the CEO, you very rarely have someone that's going to tell you no. And so having someone in your business that will tell you no and help you stay on track is really helpful. So Traction for me was that book that really made a difference.
Awesome. And Mike, last question for you here. One meal for the rest of your life. What would you choose?
Oh, man. Sushi is the first thing that came in my mind because I love sushi, but could I eat that every day? I don't know. That's tough.
Could you really eat anything every day?
Let's say that again.
Could you really eat anything every single day?
No, I think I would. I would lose my mind. That's tough. I hope to never have to face that. I wasn't expecting that question. I hope that never happens where I have to eat one thing every day. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll chalk sushi up for you though.
Nice.
First thing, top of your mind.
That's what I'm having for dinner tonight.
You're branded for life now. Mike, any questions for me today?
No, man. I appreciate you having me on. It's been a pleasure. I hope everyone out there that's listening got at least one tidbit. Hope everyone has a safe and successful holiday season, and it'd be cool to do a follow-up early next year to see how all this stuff panned out.
Yeah, I would love that. And Mike, if someone does want to reach out to you, one, can they? And two, if so, where can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm a pretty public and helpful person. So if you got questions, I'd love to hear from you. You can just email support@ecomcrew.com, EcomCrew. And then we're just Ecom Crew everywhere. That the podcast is Ecom Crew on iTunes, the website's Ecom Crew, all the social handles are Ecom Crew. So you can find us, on all those places as well.
Very good. We'll obviously have that info in the episode description as well. So if anyone's looking for it and didn't jot it down, just feel free to navigate over there and you will find it. Mike Jackness, everyone, co-founder of Ecom Crew and host of the Ecom Crew podcast. Mike, thanks so much for your time today. I appreciate it. Enjoyed the conversation. And to everyone listening, thank you for your time as well. If you have any questions, comments, or again, are interested in sharing your e-commerce or email marketing story, please email us at podcast@omnisend.com. Until next time, have a great day and be kind to one another.